Hi, Judge Andrew Napolitano here, and you are on Freedom Watch with my guest and good and longtime friend James Rosen, Fox News chief Washington correspondent. James, you were one of the few who reported initially on the violations by the NSA that were articulated by the FISA court, something that had been going on for years, and how Americans' Fourth Amendment rights have been thrown out the window. Were you surprised when you saw this?
Not really, I have to say, because I think somewhere along the line between 1974, when Cy Hirsch reported massive illegal domestic spying by the intelligence community against Americans on the front page of the New York Times, and there was a huge uproar, and 2005, when the Bush-Cheney era of warrantless wiretapping was revealed on the front page of the New York Times and there was no uproar, Americans became, in a sense, acclimated to the enduring presence of Big Brother. And where the question in 1974 was, how could the government be spying on Americans, I think post 9/11 the question on the part of Americans was, how, with all the money that we shovel, the tax money, toward a Big Brother's belly, right, can we fail to have connected the dots on 9/11, where you had an FBI agent in Minneapolis and another in Arizona, each having a very relevant point of data about the impending 9/11 plot, and you're telling me the FBI didn't have the computer equipment necessary to connect those dots automatically for us? What are we paying all that money for? So I think after 9/11, Americans are sort of desensitized to the idea that a lot of their privacy rights have been eclipsed by what we might call the surveillance state.
I often thought that the magnification of the surveillance state in 2005 was almost not quite a mea culpa, but a recognition of its utter failures. And you pointed out just two of them. There are hundreds of them that permitted 9/11 to happen. But you, the historian, are you sanguine about the fact that we were naive to think that FISA would become the law of the land and that the people we would put in charge of spying would follow the law? Stated differently, are you surprised that so much spying went on outside of FISA, right under the nose of the FISA court? Not that nobody's upset about it, but that it was done and it was lawless and they got away with it.
Well, I think it might be doing a disservice to say that all of this occurred under the nose of FISA. What happened, as captured in the documents that we reported on last week, which were first reported on by the New York Times, this was an opinion rendered by the judges on the FISA court. Right. This is a court that is usually very supportive of the intelligence community. It approves 99.97% of all requests for surveillance that come its way. But this document, which was filed in April and declassified on May 11, and which we reported recently, last week, New York Times, on or around May 11, what it showed was that somewhere around October of last year, just about 2 weeks before Election Day, very quietly, the lawyers for the National Security Agency went to FISA and in essence said, we've got some non-compliance problems with the Fourth Amendment. And that's a euphemism for saying that we were illegally, the NSA was illegally collecting information on Americans through the Section 702 of the FISA law, that permits the intelligence agencies to collect intelligence in certain ways, but not in certain other ways. And when the FISA court was apprised of this, the judges demanded to know how extensive the problem was, and several times the NSA went back to the FISA court to try and explain it, and these documents show great skepticism on the part of the FISA court, saying, we don't think you've got your arms around the true scope of this problem, and they said it represents a very serious Fourth Amendment problem.
But a lot of what NSA does is independent of FISA. It does it under a Bush interpretation of a Reagan executive order, 12333, you know this, which basically says spy on everyone all the time, but make it look like it's all being done pursuant to FISA. This has been my beef with what the surveillance state has done, which is spying on everybody all the time. Now, they don't admit this. Snowden has revealed it. Bill Binney, who's been all over Fox and who created a lot of the software they now use when he worked at NSA and was a high-ranking manager, then a whistleblower, then a defendant, then they withdrew the complaint against him. Now it's all over Fox. He's admitted it. Why is there no outrage over all the spying all the time, particularly when a San Bernardino or an Orlando happen, and the NSA has the texts and tweets and emails of these people, but it doesn't discover them until after they kill?
I think, again, one really has to point to the attacks of September 11, 2001 as a landmark moment in the evolution of Americans' feelings about surveillance. Prior to 9/11, the United States lived in relative peace and calm as the post-war victors. And after 9/11, in the most graphic and tragic way possible, the Americans became acquainted with our vulnerabilities in this very dangerous world. And so after 9/11, the appetite for Americans, perhaps it could be said that it is greater for security than for liberty. And that would be an understandable response and was predicted by many people on the day of 9/11. So the question now that Americans want to know is not, how could you be spying on us? The question they want to answer is, how can you not have gotten the bad guys after all of this tax money that we shovel in the general direction of Big Brother?
And the answer to that is, the government has information overload. It has too much data that it can't even analyze. It doesn't even know that it has the information about the Boston Marathon killers or the creeps in San Bernardino or the crazy person in Orlando until after they do their dastardly deeds. James?
Allow me to say one last thing, Judge,
sure.
which is that after we did that reporting on Fox News, I heard on my Twitter feed from a lot of Americans who were very upset about it. So I wouldn't write off Americans as apathetic to government intrusions on their privacy, but a lot of the time, the way the electronics work now and the way surveillance is conducted, Americans won't even become aware of the intrusion, perhaps for years afterward. And so it's a complicated business.
Neither will the Congress, which writes the laws, become aware that it is being surveilled, perhaps until many members of Congress are no longer there. James Rosen, always a pleasure. From New York, defending freedom whenever they let me, Judge Andrew Napolitano. See you next time, America.